Welcome to the REAL-Lationship Toolbox, where we help fine-tune your relationship skills to achieve optimal health and maximum benefits. We're the marriage service technicians, Cliff and Andrea Riley. So glad you can join us for episode 2, The Road to Recovery.
Today's episode will be a bit different from our previous show. Cliff and I, we have a passion for marriages and families that was birthed out of struggles we faced. We love taking the wisdom and insight that we've gained through our trials to help guide, instruct, and heal other relationships. Although we've accumulated quite a bit of training and we've read many books on the subject, and we've conducted a considerable amount of research over the years, while some others may quote from books and point the way, we choose to open the pages of our lives and show the way through vulnerability and authenticity.
At the time of this taping, we're all still dealing with the stress, the pressure, and the pain of the pandemic. Our lives have been impacted in profound ways. And everybody is wondering, when will it end? And when it does end, what will the new normal look like?
Yes. What will the new normal be? How will we heal from the trauma and navigate through the changes we'll face? One thing we've learned is that after a major crisis, whether it affects an individual, a family, a city, a region, a nation, or even affects the global community, when the initial event ends, things don't just fall back neatly into place. Whether the traumatic event comes in the form of a health crisis, a fire, a financial crisis, the loss of a loved one, a natural disaster, a war, or even a pandemic, when the initial event has passed, there will be a recovery period.
In our 29 years together, we've experienced seasons of recovery. Some were longer and more difficult than others. Today, we're going to share one of our most trying chapters.
And we'll follow up by sharing some of the insights that we've gained on our road to recovery. They're timeless principles that can be applied to any situation.
You can have a seat right here, Andrea.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? I'm excited.
Okay, so you're gonna be looking this way, right?
Yes.
All right, you comfortable?
Yes.
All right, let's get started.
Let me give a little background. In 2006, my family was prospering financially. My career was going well. I had plenty of overtime. Our marriage was doing great. The economy was booming. Housing volume was skyrocketing. That's when we decided to cash out on some equity of our home. Pay off a few small debts and do some remodeling. Everybody was doing it. It made perfect sense to us. Unfortunately, none of us had a crystal ball to see into the future. Our credit was great, so refinancing was pretty simple. We got our family room and 2 bathrooms remodeled, and they looked awesome. I thought, hey, might as well do the kitchen while we're at it. I'm thinking, we serve the Lord, we live right, we work hard. We haven't made any big ticket purchases in a long time. Let me rephrase that. I deserve a nice kitchen.
Cliff and I had never seen eye to eye on money. Mind you, we had made tremendous strides in our relationship, especially since the time we began praying together. At that point, we were maybe about 10 years in with the prayer. We loved each other, but somehow we could never figure out how to conquer this mountain between us. We call finances our final frontier. They say opposites attract. Well, he's a spender and I'm a saver. The one thing we had agreed on was that I would handle the finances. The budget, the bills, the bank account. I enjoyed stuff like that, making spreadsheets and forecasting when we pay off debts or when we reach a savings goal. Well, I used to enjoy it anyway.
Andrea didn't agree with my idea to remodel the kitchen, and she made her opinion known. We discussed it, debated it, even argued over it a couple of weeks. Eventually, she gave in and agreed to do it.
Because I handled the money, I was always more aware of our financial condition. Cliff worked hard and he brought the lion's share of the income, but he didn't keep close tabs on the money like I did. If he overspent and we fell behind, he'd just work overtime and pull us out the hole. So if there was something he really wanted, breaking the budget wasn't a big deal in his mind. On the other hand, since I did track the money, I was acutely aware of every dollar and every bad decision. If we broke the budget, it felt like somebody was stabbing me in the heart. And because we thought so differently in this area, when we talk about it, it was like I was speaking Greek and he was speaking Chinese. I mean, we couldn't understand each other or get on the same page. After weeks of going back and forth about it, the day came when we had to make a choice. Our contractor had this strict policy. He only worked one job at a time. So he was either going to come back the next day to start our kitchen, or he was going to go to start another job. At this point, I couldn't think of another thing to say to convince Cliff that the remodel would set us back financially. I mean, I had tried everything humanly possible to persuade him. So, I finally decided to submit to him. And I prayed and trusted God to just make everything turn out all right.
We started the kitchen remodel, but in the process, we ran out of money. By the end of the job, Andrea was totally stressed out. She had been juggling so many things to get us through the project. We wound up reopening credit cards that we had paid off when we refinanced the house. Actually, we had opened a few new ones. I can see her getting more and more angry and resentful towards me every day. I figured the overtime would pick up and we'll get out of the hole just like we always done. And I would get my loving wife back. When the kitchen was done, it was beautiful, but I couldn't really enjoy it because I can see how it had impacted our marriage. Like I was saying, none of us have a crystal ball to see the future. If I had one, I would have known that overtime was going to dry up, and I should have waited to do the kitchen. It would have taken us more than a decade to recover.
Getting through that remodel was one of the most stressful periods of my life. I mean, I was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Our credit card balances, they were like taking on a life of their own. I was checking the mailbox every day, praying for the PMI insurance refund from the refi, because we needed that money to pay off the contract at the end of the job. I must have grown 20 gray hairs every time I opened the mailbox. But what I think made me the most livid was that the person who insisted on doing the remodel and ruined our financial stability, he was nowhere around when I struggled to figure out how to pay for it. Before this, I really did enjoy handling the money. But after all the drama, I despised every part of it. Whenever bills were due, or if an unexpected expense came up, I feel myself getting angrier and angrier. And when people would compliment us on the kitchen, I would give them the side eye on the inside. And instead of realizing my dreams of working our way out of debt, mean, we had sunk into a new low. That was late spring, early summer 2007.
Fast forward a year later, overtime was a thing of the past. We were still drowning in a sea of debt with no relief in sight. We were still praying together every day, and that was our saving grace. By that time, I had admitted my mistakes and apologized numerous times to Andrea for hitting us into this situation. I repented to the Lord over and over again for not listening to his wisdom and warnings. Even though I knew God had forgiven me, I still struggled with feelings of guilt, shame, and self-doubt. I didn't just doubt myself and my leadership, I also began to doubt God and his word. You see, I had spent a number of years under teachings that convinced me if I had enough faith, I could do or have anything I say. But the truth of the matter is, the Bible says that if we ask anything according to his will, then we can have what we ask. In other words, God is not obligated to do what we want him to do. We are responsible for asking for what he wants. And if we don't know what he wants, then we should ask him instead of just filling in the blanks and assuming. The Lord had made it clear what he wanted before I got us into this mess. But I couldn't hear his voice because it sounded like my wife's voice to me, and the voice of my own will overpowered any other voice.
We were still struggling financially. Our relationship had improved somewhat. I had love and feelings towards my husband. Most days. Other days, not so much. I had already decided to forgive him, but I also understood that deciding to forgive and feeling warm and tingly towards someone were two different things. Making the decision to forgive was the first and most important step. But the road to restoration can be a long journey. Our daily time of praying together brought me back to the road of recovery every time my hurt and disappointment caused me to veer off of it. I love my husband, but our financial situation affected my life and consumed my thoughts day and night. I mean, I came to realize just how many decisions we make every single day that are tied into money or the lack of it. And when the bills rolled in and there was not enough to pay them all, my mind would wander back to the good old days before the remodel, when I could just pay the full bill without a bunch of payment arrangements to keep track of. We had gone from living comfortably to living paycheck to paycheck. And all those years of me planning, they were just flushed down the drain. Then I'd be mad at Cliff again. I remind myself of my decision to forgive. We pray together. I release my negative emotions and thoughts. We'd be in a good place. I feel the love. And then the bills would be due again. I mean, this was a continual cycle. And I struggled to keep myself from being sucked back into it.
May 2008 was when dreams of overtime returning came to a sudden halt. I was laid off work. Thank God I received a severance package. Andrea and I knew that we were called to minister to married couples. We decided to use the severance period to start our organization. Things were rolling along. We wrote a curriculum and we hosted our very first marriage workshop. We enrolled in a summer program at the University of Central Florida to get licensed in this area. We saw this as a new beginning. It was an exciting time, and I saw signs of our pre-kitchen remodel relationship returning. I felt that God had taken me off punishment.
Believe it or not, I was actually encouraged when Cliff was laid off. I mean, I knew we were destined to do great things together. and believed this was our opportunity to start them. I also thought that God was finally coming through for me and answering my prayer by making things turn out all right. Finally, we were hopeful again. Cliff continued to get a steady paycheck, but he wasn't working, so we had time together to plan the launch. It was the best of both worlds. That is, until September rolled around. We had 8 more weeks of salary and medical insurance to count on, and we were well on our way with our plans to launch. Well, that's what we thought. I remember the moment that we learned his severance had run out. 2 months earlier than expected. Whoa! I mean, that rocked my world. And what happened next is kind of hard to explain, but I literally heard something break on the inside. It sounded like someone took a wooden board and karate chopped it. I mean, the sound came from the inside of me, but it was so loud, it felt like I heard it through my ears. I was messed up. It felt as though the floodgates had opened and all the angst and frustration and fear and disappointment and bitterness and resentment, every negative emotion I had been warring against just flooded my soul all at once. I was in a very dark place. You hear stories about the little kid whose parent made him sit down, and he says, "I'm sitting down on the outside, but in my mind, I'm still standing up." Well, I told my husband, "I'm not leaving you on the outside, but in my mind, I don't want to be married anymore." And at that point, I felt abandoned by the Lord. I said, "God, I prayed, cried, and pleaded with you to show Cliff that the kitchen remodel was a bad idea. And when he didn't see it, I trusted you, that if I submitted, you would protect me and fix things. I mean, if I had known you weren't going to come through, I wouldn't have done it. I trusted you. And just look at this mess."
I would love to be able to say that things turned around the next day, but that was not the case. We were in the middle of a great recession. Over the next 6 months, we scraped by because I couldn't find work. Andrea was homeschooling our daughters during the day, and she was able to find part-time work in the evenings. We used up all our retirement savings to make ends meet. And when I finally landed a job, my salary was much lower than before.
Less pay plus more bills plus 0 overtime equals a recipe for disaster. It was tough. But when I looked around, I saw millions of families were losing their homes and filing for bankruptcy. And even though it was a struggle, we were able to keep our home. That's when I realized God hadn't abandoned me, and that my prayers were not in vain.
I tell you, the road to recovery has been long and difficult. The one constant that held us together was that we never stopped praying together, regardless of the circumstances. Truth be told, that's all I had at the time, but it gave me peace and hope. That's how I learned to build my faith the right way. It's how I learned to hear and obey the voice of God.
We stayed the course, and restoration finally came. I can now say that I'm free of bitterness and resentment, and I'm in love with my husband more than ever before.
Many couples went through what we did, but they didn't make it. We witness other couples who are going through it right now, and it hurts our heart. That is why we are so passionate about sharing our story and what we've learned along the journey. We know what hopelessness feels like. We're always excited when God uses us to help ignite hope in others. He's given us a purpose for our pain.
And cut.
Awesome job, honey. We thank God for bringing us through that challenging season.
Yes, thank God.
One of the promises that I stood on through that trial is found in Joel 2:25. The Lord promised to restore the years that were eaten by the plagues. He's the only one who can go back in time and make up for years of pain and suffering.
Now that sounds like restitution to me.
Yes.
We want to leave you with one of the tools that we learned to use along the way. Our first step on the road to recovery is to reveal. In other words, we must get up the courage to assess the damage and acknowledge exactly where we landed.
We're both trained trauma healing facilitators through the American Bible Society's Trauma Healing Institute and Quest movement. There are 3 questions that we're trained to ask when leading healing groups. Now, if you have a pen and paper handy, you may want to jot these down, but if not, no worries. You can text the words Road to Recovery to the number 22828, and we'll send them to you promptly. But we want you to ask yourself 3 questions and then write your answers out. Take your time and be completely honest.
Number 1, what happened? Question number 2 is, how do you feel? And number 3, what was the hardest part for you? We want to warn you that you may experience a wide range of emotions during this exercise. If you have someone you can trust to talk this out with, someone who can help you process your feelings, that could be extremely helpful. We would like to share a great way to help you process your pain through trauma healing groups. This is an amazing resource to start you on the road to recovery. You can find a group at questmovement.org.
And here's a 4th question for you to ask yourself. What would you like to see happen? And you can turn this answer into your prayer of petition. Another part of the trauma healing training we received was writing a lament. The Trauma Healing Institute defines a lament as people pouring out their complaints to God in an effort to persuade Him to act on their behalf, while stating their trust in Him. A lament allows a person to fully express their grief. Now, we'll talk more about that and the impact of writing a lament in our podcast, and that can be found on our website, themarriagetext.com.
We find reading scriptures along with prayer can be very therapeutic in the recovery process. In closing, we will share an example of a lament found in the Bible, Psalm 13.
How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemy say, I have prevailed against her. Lest those who trouble me rejoice when I am moved. But I have trusted in your mercy. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me.
That was powerful, sweetheart. Thank you so much for joining us. We pray this episode has been a blessing to you. Until next time, feel free to visit us online. you're sure to find some great resources there. Until then,
We're the Marriage Service Technicians, signing off.
Hi guys. Hi ZJ. How are you? Shay here, and I'm just giving you an update during my coronavirus quarantine. So I'm still working, I'm healthy, I'm alive and still free of the virus. I had a chance to attend my very first virtual homegoing service due to the COVID-19 quarantine. It was a very different experience. So, Eric has taken the time during this COVID quarantine to build a computer. Hi, son. Turn around. And I think it's amazing. This whole pandemic has inspired my son's potential career.
Hi, I'm just checking in from the last episode and my updates. So far, I'm in finals with my classes, and I'm still waiting for a call back from my job. So, yeah. So, since the recording of episode 1 of the Relationship Toolbox, I'm back at work now. Yay. So I've been at work for 2 weeks now, and my business applied for one of the business loans, and they were approved. So the business loan lasts for 8 weeks, and as I said, I've been working for 2 of those 8 weeks.
Hi, this is Andrea Riley with a COVID-19 check-in for the Jacobs Riley family. We're all in good health and continuing to be safe. Alicia and I are still working our jobs and providing essential products and materials to help prevent and keep safe from the COVID-19. Our boys, Christian and Taylor, they are continuing to enjoy the time off from school. However, they now actually have school work. The schools have actually provided laptops so they can continue their schoolwork, and they're now doing the video chats with their teachers and completing daily schoolwork. And they are, they're anxious they're pretty anxious to get outside. I have actually had a few friends and colleagues who have become sick or have even passed away. I actually had a classmate a couple of weeks ago who I went to school with actually passed away.
Since the last episode, I was laid off. I've been using my time to co-produce the show, build the Marriage Service Technicians website, and so that's been keeping me pretty busy.